Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast. I'm your host, Darren Marr, and I'm joined by two people who are fresh off their yachts after watching the Monaco Grand Prix last week, Fionn Malloy and Jake Woolhead. Lads, how was the race and how was it rubbing shoulders with the who's who of the world?
You might have checked out my yacht. It's the yacht that has a second yacht that I need to pull up into that yacht. So you might have caught that on the TV there. But I had a nice overview of the race. Very boring overall. Not a lot of action happening.
Yeah, I use Jake's yacht as the helipad for my yacht. I to be honest, I'm a Charles Leclerc fan, so I was devastated from the start, and the rest of the race didn't do much to cheer me up. But Sainz
got on the Hamilton not go first anyway.
That was, as an Irishman, that's what we were all cheering for.
But Verstappen, I'm still not a fan of Verstappen anyway. So
he's young, he might grow on you, but hopefully next race will be a bit more entertaining.
I think anyone that watched the Drive to Survive documentary hates Max Verstappen, so I think that's the main reason. Even though I kind of actually like him this year, he's just because he's the only one that can challenge Hamilton, and that's other reasons why we don't like Lewis Hamilton. But listen, we are not a F1 show. If you want to listen to anyone talk F1, listen to Fionn and his other podcast, the Front Row podcast, that you catch every week too. There you go, Fionn. I knew I'd give you a nice plug.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
You didn't even have to pay me this time for it. It was great.
There's a Guinness on the way in the pod.
Brilliant. The sponsorships are finally coming in now. Here we go. But on the show today, we are continuing our off-season series, and we are in the home stretch. There's only a few teams left to speak about, and today we are speaking about the San Francisco 49ers, and we're delighted to be joined by John Chapman from the 49ers Rush podcast. John, how are you today?
I am great, but I'm not as good as Jake. It's 1 o'clock here, and he's over here having a Guinness. Mine's the same color, but there's no alcohol in it, so I'm still drinking coffee over here. So I just want to say, man, I'm a little jealous already, but very happy to be here. Love what you guys do, and it's awesome. Had a little communication, so I started diving around and stuff. You guys are entertaining now. I got to tell you that, man, and so glad to be here.
Excellent. We're delighted to have you on. We were speaking last week as well. You're saying you have a good few Irish listeners on your show now as well. So we'll definitely, hopefully, to reach out and find a nice balance there too. Although I have to say, I was listening to your show last week, and we'll do one more pivot away from football before we do. You say you're a mad Dallas Mavericks fan.
Yes, sir.
I'm a Clippers fan, so we have more rivalry, not just 49ers Seahawks. Now we have Clippers and Mavericks a little bit too. So this one we could be butting heads by the end of this.
I'm just saying, man. I don't know who the Luka of this podcast is, but I'm just saying he's going to have his way with those Clippers, man.
Well, Fionn is the Paul George. He plays great before we go into the main games where he becomes playoff Fionn, where we just can't get anything decent out of him. But sure, look, again, I promise you, John, we are a football podcast and we are going to talk football. But before we get into that, if you are watching us on YouTube, can you please like this video and subscribe to the Under Center podcast? That's where you'll find each and every video we are going to upload, each and every show we do with all of our guests that we're doing in our off-season series, and obviously when we come to the regular season, our shows there too. The same on the audio side of things. If you prefer to listen to us while you're out on your walk or your run or your workout, same thing, just search Under Center Podcast. We're on all podcasting platforms. You'll find us there. Also, go to our socials, facebook.com/Under Center Pod. Twitter and Instagram is the exact same. It's Under Center Pod. We're on the quest for 1,000 before the regular season starts. So we want to try see if we can get to 1,000 followers before the start, week 1 of the regular season in 2021. So let's see if we can get there. We're most of the way there. We just need a little more push. But look, let's start and talk some 49ers. And John, I want to start with the draft because that is the biggest storyline for 49ers that came out of draft week. Was obviously moving all the way up to 3. All the talk heading into it was Mac Jones, Trey Lance. Who were they going to go for? Everyone thought it was going to be Mac Jones. All indications that it was going to be Mac Jones. Trey Lance was the guy that they went for in the end. You happy with that move?
Oh, I'm ecstatic about that move. Like, here's my thing. You have Jimmy Garoppolo there, and this isn't a bash Jimmy Garoppolo, but he has his limitations. why would you trade 3 first-round picks and a third to go up and get Jimmy Garoppolo 1.7? Like, it's literally the exact same skill set. Now, perhaps Mac Jones will be a better pro. That's fine. But what does he change? What is it that he opens up differently than if you had Jimmy Garoppolo? And as we saw, not a lot of teams coveted Mac Jones. He fell all the way to 15, and nobody even, like, it wasn't even there. And so I love Trey Lance. I was a really big supporter of Trey Lance being that pick because he's the ceiling is there. He's the youngest rostered quarterback in the NFL, just turned 21 a week ago. And yeah, the limited starts are key, but guess what? He had the same number of starts as Mac Jones did in college, 17 each. Same number of starts as Joe Burrow the year before, 17 at LSU. Now, it's different, the level of competition. I give you that. But, man, I love Trey Lance. I'm so excited for this. And I like that we kept Jimmy because now Trey gets to sit and learn. And whenever he steps in, he'll still be the youngest quarterback in the NFL, but he'll be ready to go.
Our own Dara, for his own personal reasons, not hatred of the 49ers, was hoping Mac Jones would fall to the 49ers.
I feel like all the NFC West was. Yeah.
Praying for Mac Jones for that to happen. Well, to be fair, I was kind of more okay with Trey Lance. I would have actually been more scared if he got Justin Fields.
Fields is a beast.
I thought he was the number 3 overall quarterback, maybe number 2 in some people's eyes ahead of Zach Wilson, but definitely I think he was better than Lance and Jones. More so Lance because he's NFL ready now. Lance might need a year or so to get used to it.
Right. And I think it's going to be fun because we play him. We play at Chicago week 8. And, man, Justin Fields versus Trey Lance would just be – that'd be so fun to watch.
There's a decent chance that both of them quarterbacks are starting by week 8.
Mm-hmm. John, you talked about moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo and that you were happy that you still kept him on the roster. You didn't have to trade him or give him up for cap space. And I think in the NFL, sometimes we're a little bit short-term memory. It's only 2019 you guys were in the Super Bowl with the same Jimmy Garoppolo under center. What is it that went wrong that prompted San Francisco to move on? I know you say he has limitations, but if those limitations are enough to get you to the Super Bowl, surely you can be pretty happy with them, no?
Yeah, I think the 49ers front office with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they're different. And they're different in the way that they're honest to the media. And they kind of tip their hat a little bit too much, especially after the fact. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both reiterated, we're very happy with Jimmy. He just gets injured too much. And so 2 of the last 3 seasons have been ruined because of Jimmy Garoppolo injuries. And Kyle Shanahan is basically, and the way they drafted was, we're not allowing injuries to be an excuse or ruin our season anymore. So if Jimmy does get hurt again, Jimmy's going to be the guy. I'm telling you that right now. He's going to start week 1. And you just let him roll. And if he gets injured again, you shrug your shoulders. Here comes Trey Lance. Guess what? The 49ers just got better. But I think kind of what you said, Fionn, I think they're happy with Jimmy. Is he the perfect ideal build of a quarterback? No, he's not. But he's good enough to get this roster and this coaching staff to the Super Bowl. I think Trey Lance kind of puts that over the top. But if Jimmy balls out this year and takes him back to the Super Bowl, that's the best problem in the world for the 49ers.
Yeah, just going back to the Lance pick itself, because there was a lot of draft capital given up to get to number 3 from the Dolphins, future number 1s included. Sort of a package deal that you would send to maybe a more veteran quarterback. And I'm just wondering, was that package always there available, and were they going to use it on a veteran quarterback? 2 names that come to mind were Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, the legal issues going on with Watson have stalled any sort of move, and the Rodgers thing, well, look, we still don't know what's going on there with Green Bay, if he is going to move, if he's not going to move, hell, if he's even going to retire. So do you believe was there any sort of talks about getting that established one, or were they always going for Trey Lance as their number 1 guy?
I wanted to say they always want to go for Trey Lance, but again, if you remember, the news got leaked out that they called Green Bay the morning of the draft and said, hey, is Aaron Rodgers available or not? Like, we're still open. So, like, deep down, we're like, oh, yeah, it was always Trey Lance. But I don't think it was. And so if you can get Aaron Rodgers the MVP, I think Kyle Shanahan would have done that as well. But there was no doubt they were going to upgrade the quarterback position. That was a priority moving forward. And the reason why they were allowed to do that, if you look at what they did during free agency, they brought everybody back. They lost Tevin Coleman to the Jets. That's pretty much it. So they rebuilt the team that they had because they thought it was a winning team. The injuries in 2019 totally ruined that, or 2020 ruined that. But they think that they have a Super Bowl caliber roster now. So they were kind of in a luxury position to package those picks up and go get a quarterback.
That team with Aaron Rodgers would probably be the scariest team in the NFL. It would just be dangerous. Now, you have Jimmy G. We were talking about Jimmy G. I've never been a fan of him as a football player. He may be the most handsome man in the NFC or the NFL, maybe.
I date him. He's pretty cute.
I think I date him, and I'm not into dudes, but I would totally date that dude. But having said that, I'm not a huge fan of his football playing skill. I think, as you said, he has a very limited ceiling, and that's what forced you to pick up a quarterback and trade all that the capital to get the quarterback. Now, if barring any setback of an injury with Jimmy G, what do you give a chance of Trey Lance starting at all this season over Jimmy G?
I do. You're going to see the shiny new toy at some point. Now, Jimmy G's going to start week 1. And I think there's 2 key dates that stand out outside of injury, as you said, Jake. Why Trey Lance? Okay, number 1 is week 6. The 49ers have the earliest bye week, which I hate so much. I hate that early bye week, week 6. They're coming off week 7. That would be a perfect time because you give them 2 full weeks. But I don't like that because listen to the defenses they have off of the bye week. Colts, Bears, Cardinals, Rams, all in a row. I don't want to send my rookie quarterback out into that. I think he might be ready for it, but still, it's just like, that's pretty tough. Week 11, however, week 11 would be the perfect switch, and that's kind of my prediction for when Trey Lance starts, because listen to these defenses after week 11. Jaguars, Vikings, Seahawks, no offense, and the Bengals. I don't think any of those defenses are really scaring you or whatever else. So I think that would be a great transition point. You can put them in week 11, Trey Lance, and you allow him to have some rookie mistakes against some lesser defenses and hope to work out all those kinks in time to make that playoff run.
I think another aspect as well is you don't want to tip that hand too early for rookie quarterbacks. They don't always adjust well to the NFL defenses. And I think the later you let it get into the season before anyone gets to see him, he doesn't face any of those really tight game plans either, on top of, as you mentioned, those slightly weaker defenses in terms of ranking.
Yeah, that's a great point. You see these rookies like Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson, and they come in and they just light the world on fire. But as the season goes, it dips a little bit. And again, the 49ers don't have the Bengals roster, right? They're not the Jaguars. This isn't the Jets. They are planning to win. And so, yeah, I think the Jets are smart for just handing the keys over to Zach Wilson and seeing what you got. But this is the entire team's projection is to the postseason, and they fully expect to be involved in that. So again, we're not going through the rookie season lumps. That's not the plan anyway. We're going to polish him in practice, preseason, all those things. And when he's ready or Jimmy gets injured, then you make that switch.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we were just mentioning the schedule, because we were going to move on to that. You were saying the bye week in week 6. Most of the divisional games you'd be played over a 6-game spell. 4 of them obviously be against teams in the division middle of the season, 2 before and 2 after the bye. What in the broader terms, are you happy with the schedule, barring, like you said, the week 6 bye? And are you scared that if your prediction comes that by the time the Seahawks face the 49ers for the second time, that Kerry Hyder's going to break your new tie?
Oh, I love Kerry Hyder, man. Why you got to use that against me? I love it. That hurt. Well, I can say this about the 49ers to the north, because they just take all our players. It's just what it is. They're going to definitely know what's going on. And that schedule, I love this for the 49ers. And the Seahawks fans, I feel like you guys get this as well, because West Coast teams get screwed more than anybody else because you got to fly across the country and play 3 hours earlier. I mean, how do you guys feel when you're watching, live football games in Ireland? You're tired as hell. What time do they come on? Like the early kickoffs. What time is that?
Early kickoffs
6 p.m. So it's
6.
perfect.
Oh, those late games, those primetime games is like a 3 a.m. kickoff.
I was in San Francisco a couple of years ago and I watched San Francisco play the Giants, unfortunately for myself. But I came out of that stadium and I was like, oh, grand, I'll go to a pub and I'll watch the rest of the matches. But like, Jesus, they were already on. They're already nearly over by the time I got into a pub. That time difference is crazy.
That was the weirdest thing ever as well. I was lucky enough to go to a Washington game in Washington and going at the normal time and you come out and the day's not over. It's like still the afternoon. You're like, yeah, we're going to the pub.
I love it, man. And see, that's the thing over here. Again, you went to San Francisco. The games are over. Even the late, like Monday Night Football games over. It's like 8:30. It's like 8:30 at night. So the schedule as a whole, I love it for the 49ers. The road trips are very manageable. There's no 3-game road trips. We're not playing very many teams off their buys. There's not a super crazy stretch. You mentioned the middle of the season where you're playing, 4 of your 6 games in the middle of the chunk are against division opponents, but we got a bye week in there. So years past, there's always 4 weeks where it's just like, what the hell? But no, I like this schedule.
John, just couldn't say back to the draft a little bit. What outside of Trey Lance, who would be your favorite, say, draft pick that you were picked up? I quite fancy Trey Sermon. I thought he was a fantastic pickup.
And it was at a position they didn't need this year. Kyle Shanahan's drafted one running back since he's been here. It was Joe Williams, traded up in the 3rd round out of Utah. He never had one carry for the 49ers. So to spend a 3rd round pick on a running back and never get one carry, Kyle Shanahan said, screw it, undrafted free agents from here on out. Finally decided, and he traded with the division opponent. He traded with the Rams. Gave up 2 4th rounders to jump into the 3rd round to get Trey Sermon. And it doesn't really fit what Kyle Shanahan likes. He usually likes those 4-3, 4-4 running backs, high-speed guys, one-cut runners. That's not Trey Sermon. So it's going to be interesting, but fully expect Trey Sermon to get a lot of work very early on. Mostert's going to be the guy, but Mostert can't stay healthy. So you keep Mostert's carries, 7 to 10 carries a game. That's kind of what you want him to be. Trey Sermon comes in. I think he's going to lead the team in carries his rookie year.
Yeah, no, when I watched a lot of his footage, I thought, as you said, he's not maybe the right pick or the right style, perhaps, but certainly a very talented running back. And I thought if anyone's going to get good use out of a running back like him, it would be Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, if you're a running back, you hit the jackpot. Because if you remember, Alfred freaking Morris was 2nd in the NFL in rush yards his rookie year, and I still don't understand how that guy had a career in the league. But hey, props to him. He got paid, so glad he got some money out of it.
He was on the Giants last year, so I'm well aware of Alfmo.
I'm sorry you had to watch that.
Do you think with, as you said, that slightly different running back draft pick, Trey Lance, obviously, as you already mentioned, brings a lot more dynamicism to the quarterback position than Garoppolo does. Are we going to see a radically different 49ers offense this season, or is it going to be something similar? Run the ball hard and really lean on Kittle.
Yeah, I don't think you change the playbook. I really, really don't think that's what's going to happen. And the funny thing is, you'll see Jimmy Garoppolo do a makeshift zone read where he turns like he's reading the defensive end. He's not reading the defensive end. That's an automatic give. And so you keep that in there. The only difference is now you have the attempt of a keep for the quarterback, and it just makes everybody honest. Kyle Shanahan talked about we finally will get to play 11 versus 11 in the running game. Because as a defense, when you're playing a non-mobile quarterback, you just wipe the quarterback off. You don't even account for him. He's not in your numbers. You put Trey Lance back there. A lot of people forget the style of competition was not the same. I get that. It was FCS, North Dakota State. He had 1,100 rush yards in one season, 14 rushing touchdowns in one season. He had a GPS tracker in the shoulder pads like a lot of the NFL programs did. He had the highest speed. It was just under 22 miles per hour of any NFL quarterback last year. He would have been the fastest quarterback, even more than Lamar Jackson, with the time that he put up at North Dakota State.
Do you think he could beat Daniel Jones in a foot race?
Well, I can tell you he'll cross the finish line.
Man.
He'll cross the finish line first because Daniel Jones going to be laying on his stomach.
That turf monster has beef with Daniel Jones.
Jones was faster than Lamar Jackson last year, so I'll take it.
Yeah. He also hit the ground faster than Lamar Jackson as well.
That's fair.
That pivot was pretty big.
What is it they say? That run like you're angry at the ground. The ground was angry at Daniel Jones.
It got him.
You know, that's what it was. But John, how big of a miss is it going to be not having Robert Saleh as the defensive coordinator next season?
I will say this: Robert Saleh's best, what he brought to the team that was better than anything else wasn't as DC. He is a leader of men and a morale changer. He was incredible. There were a lot of issues, and man, I'm sure you as a Seahawks fan, you can appreciate this. His in-game adjustments are almost non-existent. Mobile quarterbacks destroyed him because of how he would account for them. I'm not trying to bash Saleh. I think he's incredible, and I hope he has a lot of success as the Jets. But what he brought wasn't so much scheme. It wasn't in-game management. That's not what he was. But that kind of solidifying presence in the locker room, the morale builder, all those things, that was what was key. Now, DeMeco Ryans, who a lot of people know about, out of Alabama, absolute incredible pro, played with Houston for a while, all over the place, Philadelphia and Houston. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves this guy. And if you go back and you watch those clips where Robert Saleh's like pumping it up and jumping up and down, you'll see DeMeco Ryans right over his shoulder doing the same damn thing. So you're hoping to keep some of that personality, some of that energy, but he's never called plays ever. So this is brand new. So we'll have to kind of see what happens there, but I would be willing to bet you put Nick Bosa and Fred Warner on any defense. I bet John Chapman could even call plays for those guys.
I remember commenting when we got to watch a couple of 49ers games that I saw Saleh on the TV more than I saw Shanahan. Like, he got more airtime than anybody else on that sideline.
Well, if you're showing Shanahan on the big screen, you've got to be ready to blur out a lot of things because he's cussing people nonstop and he'll cover his face and you'll just see him just like he's almost like Gruden where he's like just pissed off all the time whenever he's calling plays. But yeah, Saleh was so much more animated. I agree with you.
John, I'm getting flashbacks for last year when the Giants played the 49ers with like your second string, third string, everything. And for some reason, the Giants just crumbled inside themselves, scored 3 field goals and lost 36 to, I don't know, was it Nick Mullins at the helm?
Yeah.
It hurts. I'm still salty.
It was a good game for Mullins. And that's kind of who Mullins is. If you have to game plan, if he has to sit through he's going to be trash. But, he steps in because of the injury and just lights it up. But yeah, that was a fun game. That was about the highest point of the season of the 49ers. It went straight downhill from there, Jake. So just want to let you know, week 3, it was all bad from there.
The Giants season never really took off. So,
well, the highlight was that Seahawks game. Colt McCoy, and actually Alfred Morris. Yeah, that we were actually mentioning him there just a little earlier on.
Yeah, that Giants defense really killed Russell Wilson in that one. I bet you were happy to see that one, John.
Oh, very much so. Plus, I'm a Longhorn, so anytime Colt McCoy's out there, I'm just like, oh yeah, remember the good times, baby.
But just looking at, say, some positions of need before the season starts, and one that I looked at, and you sort of mentioned it in your show as well, is the wide receiver 3 position. Now, the Niners did take on Marquis Lee. You did the sort of you talked about him on your podcast a little bit and the sort of limitations that he had, especially route running, and promptly the 49ers were listening to you because then they cut him a couple of days later. So, and now I think they've signed, was it Bernie Fowler to at the moment? But
there we go, Benny Fowler.
Yeah, Giants legend Benny Fowler.
With Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk there now as the two sort of establishing themselves as wide receiver 1 and 2, could it be more a more veteran name coming in, and does the name Julio Jones possibly come up in the Kyle Shanahan sort of list of players he'd like to sign?
I think it has to. I mean, Kyle Shanahan was his OC for 2 years. Julio Jones' best 2 years of his entire career were under Kyle Shanahan. He had 1,800 yards in 1 year. And if you look at what, people always want to say Julio Jones, so injury prone, whatever else. Well, he played in 9 games last year. What he did in 9 games last year would have been the 49ers leading wide receiver for the entire year. So I would take 9 games of Julio over about 11 or 12 games of almost anybody. Now, the problem is we've already given up so much draft capital for Trey Lance, like we talked about. Julio Jones probably going to cost a second or a third, fourth with some players being exchanged, some young, because the Falcons are in a mess. I don't know who you had on with the Falcons, but I guarantee you they were broke because they can't even they can't pay their own draft picks. They can't sign them. They don't have any money. So they have to do something. Grady Jarrett, who I think is a hell of a player. I think he's a top 5 defensive tackle, D lineman in the league. And then also Julio Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if both are gone in a short week because that June 1st, what is it, the 25th today? June 1st is when you can basically prorate those cap penalties out over 2 years and spread it out. So I expect something to get done in the next week. I hope the 49ers can find a way to get Julio without giving up a second. If we don't give up a second, I'd be all for it.
The next draft will be certainly very boring if you have to give up your second.
I know. We're hosting a show in Vegas live, and I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to come. Like, come watch day 3.
Just go to the roulette table for that, and then you'll be
there.
fine.
You go, man.
But so other than finishing second and hoping for a playoff spot next season, what are the aims? Now, obviously, last year you've lost it just due to so many injuries, and like rivalry aside, that just sucks for any team just to have that many injuries. I'm guessing the sort of the main objective is to keep as many players fit as you can, and then sort of just go from there, just because of the amount of talent that is in that team just naturally.
Yeah, they have so much depth. I think it's weird how the NFC West has kind of shifted, okay? I think you have the Seahawks and the Rams who are saying, we're going to get as many elite players as possible and depth be damned. Like, we want Wagner, we want Adams, we want Russell Wilson, we want these top-level DK Metcalf type elite players, but then the middle of the lineup's rough, and it's even worse with the Rams. I think they got like 4 or 5 dudes, and that's it. They have cut, so they lost like 4 starters on that defense last year. But then you've got the Cardinals and the 49ers that, again, they're kind of stocking up the shelves. And so not so much top end elite talent, but a lot more kind of jacks and queens, I guess you could say, card term, right? In that basket. So Kyle Shanahan, his whole thing, injuries won't beat us this year. Even if we have injuries, we've established the depth to where that cannot be an excuse at almost every position besides wide receiver. So yeah, I think you're planning on winning the division. And I think there's 3 teams. I don't consider Arizona a contender yet, but I think Seattle, you've got Los Angeles, the Rams, and the 49ers. Those 3 teams, I mean, it's almost flip a coin. They're all so damn good. And if I'm just looking at rosters, I'm saying the Rams and 49ers have the edge, but neither of those teams have Russell Wilson. And he's kind of the outlier that just defies all odds over and over and over again.
Unless he starts this season like he ended the last season, then there could be big.
That was the worst 10-game stretch of his career by a long shot. Could
the cliff hits quarterbacks out of nowhere? He could be gone. He could be halfway to the center of the earth, Dara.
Well, come on, guys.
Oh, he's hurt.
Let's be a little realistic. Come on.
We got a marshmallow at offensive line to try and protect them.
Look, this could be the last year I have Russell Wilson. I'm going to make the most of it, No, but seriously, look, I was actually going to ask, what did you make of the Cardinals? Because I can't quite put my finger on what they're trying to be. They sort of, obviously with Cliff Kingsbury and his offensive system where he loves to go 5 wide with the receivers, but it was a lot of run heavy stuff there last year. The guys that they're bringing in, JJ Watt, I think you're hoping you're going to get like JJ Watt from like 4 or 5 years ago. Same with AJ Green. You're trying to get AJ Green from 4 or 5 years ago. Do they think they're still in 2016 or something, or like what's going on over there?
You almost have to go back before 2016 with a lot of these guys. Like, that's even too recent. And here's my thing. The roster looks good. The best thing I can say about the Cardinals is this. They're getting Chandler Jones back, who I think, got robbed a defensive player of the year a few years ago. He's incredible. But Kingsbury's my personal opinion is the worst coach in the NFL, and it's not close. This is the same coach that couldn't get a winning record in the Big 12 with Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes, still couldn't get a winning record. Like, he puts people out of position. Why half of his team isn't tall enough to ride a roller coaster? I don't understand. Why do you keep getting guys that need booster seats? I don't understand it. Like, that hasn't translated to the NFL yet, but he's just dead set. Oh, guys 5'7", get him. Like, I don't understand. I'm not a fan of what they're doing there.
Maybe he watched too much basketball. He's going for that small ball.
There you go.
Go underneath, run under everybody.
Right. He's a Muggsy Bogues fan. Who would have guessed?
I love the very obvious interdivision hate going on.
It's just poor coaching bothers me, right? So, like, I watch Seattle and I get upset because, one, they're good, and two, they won't protect Russell Wilson. Like, even though I hate Seattle and I want him to lose every game, it bothers me. Like, I hate that he's the most sacked quarterback and he's so damn talented. And so whenever you're watching the Cardinals and you see so much talent and you draft a guy like Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, who's a hell of a phenomenal athlete, and you play him in 3 separate positions in 3 games, like, you're doing a disservice to football. Like, come on. What are you doing? You're not developing. You're ruining talent. And that bothers me. Like, I should be happy. But, like, the inside, like, yeah, I'm a former football coach. And so, like, I watch it. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that. But having said that, I hope he stays there forever. I hope he never gets fired.
I mean, Simmons should have been Darius Leonard. Like, he had all that hype coming out. I think Hopkins and blank name, the quarterback. I've forgotten him.
Kyler
Murray. I think they made them look so much better. I think if you remove those 2 players, I think they're in the bin with the Jets and the Jaguars last season. I really do.
Yeah, and all that you're using, Hopkins for is out routes. That's all he runs. He runs 5-yard out routes and stops. You got one of the best route runners with the best hands and a good quarterback, and all you're doing is out routes and stop routes. Like, I don't like it.
Well, I think that's a team sort of just figured them out for the second half of the season. These read options, teams figured them out so quickly. And look, Kyler Murray just got hurt so much towards the end of the season too. So they'll have to obviously think of something better for him next year. But one more question before we let you go, John. Whose defense is going to be hurt more or take the biggest downturn next year from losing their DCs? The 49ers or the Rams?
Oh, the Rams by a long stretch. I think that they had one of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinator in the league. And not to mention, they have lost 4 or 5 starters on that defense as well. So I think that's key. Now, they upgraded the quarterback position. We'll have to see there. But if you look at the 49ers, they were still a top 10 defense. Now, the Rams were the best last year, but the 49ers were still a top 10 defense despite missing all those injured players. And so now you're bringing all those injured players back for the most part, and you've got a lot more depth on the defensive line and in the cornerback position. So I think the 49ers, again, they don't have as far to drop because they, again, were around that kind of 8 to 10 range. But, man, it's a fall far from number 1, and I think they're going to go a ways down.
Cool. And before we let you go, John, where can people find your show and your socials?
Yeah, 49ers Rush podcast, wherever you watch, listen to podcasts. YouTube's probably the best place to find us. Just type in John Chapman or 49ers Rush. You'll find us there. And yeah, Twitter at JL_Chapman. I'm a big film guy, so I'm usually putting up a whole bunch of clips. So if you're film people, that's kind of my bread and butter as a former coach. So if you're into that stuff, come check it out. And man, if I'm ever in Ireland, which I want to go so bad, we're doing a 49ers Rush road trip this year to 3 of the games where we're tailgating together, throwing big parties and stuff the night before. And the 49ers had a chance to be that London game because the Jags were hosts. I was going to be there. I was going to be there. I know it's not the same, but man, I want to go across the pond and hang out because, you started the show off talking. We have so many international listeners and football is just spreading so quick across everywhere. And I love that. So really appreciate the time, guys. Y'all are awesome. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming on, John.
No problem.
And the Seahawks suck. That's the last thing I got
to say. So I hope everybody enjoyed John's last appearance on this podcast.
We tell everybody else we'd love to have you on again. That's
This is one thing, you're going to get Irish honesty. Like, you're gone now. This is it. You're blacklisted now. That's it. But no, seriously, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us, and we will definitely be having you on again to speak some 49ers, probably after the Seahawks beat them twice next year.
Ooh, hey, I will come on here and eat crow, and I will tip the hat and all that stuff. I believe in giving credit to where credit's due, man.
I'll tell you, we'll put a Guinness bet on it. Whichever team wins owes the other guy a Guinness for when you finally get over here. That's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. But listen, guys, before we go, if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to the Under Center podcast. Do the same wherever you get your audio podcasts. Just search Under Center Podcast. You'll find us there too. On our socials, Twitter, Instagram, @Under Center Pod. Like I said earlier, we're looking to reach 1,000 followers before week 1 of the regular season. So if you are listening to the podcast and you haven't followed us yet, go to those social pages and give us a follow too for that. That would really help us out. But that is all the time we have for on this show. We will be back later in the week talking some more teams and their off-season needs. But until then, stay safe and we'll speak soon.